This was never a fairy tale. Fairy tales entertain. This one survived. There was a time when hunger erased villages, when winter arrived in September and stayed until May, when soldiers burned the fields and silence replaced children's names. During those years, love did not disappear, but it stopped being enough. Parents learned what starvation demanded. Not courage, not morality, choices. Not between right and wrong, but between watching all your children waste away over months, or taking some of them into the forest, where the cold might finish it faster. They told themselves it was mercy, that wolves would be kinder than hunger. The forest in this story is not a metaphor. It was where families sent the children they could no longer afford to watch die slowly at home. And those children, most of them, did not come back. Hansel and Gretel was not invented. It was witnessed, passed down in whispers, in folktales that were really confessions. In stories, parents told to justify what they had done or to warn others of what they might have to do. This is not a story about magic. It is a record of footsteps that ended in silence, houses that appeared when children were weakest, parents who walked home lighter, and the ones who made it back anyway. The story does not ask you to believe in witches, only to recognize what people become when the food runs out and winter does not end. Because once you strip away the candy, once you remove the costume, once you quiet the false ending, what remains is not evil. It is hunger. And hunger does not care who it takes. It only cares that it is fed. Long before the Brothers Grimm collected this story, Europe had already learned what hunger could do. The Great Famine had killed millions. Entire villages emptied, parents sold children into servitude. Elderly family members walked into forests to die voluntarily. There were even documented cases of cannibalism. By the time the Grimms wrote Hansel and Gretel down in the early 1800s, the story was already old. So old that once upon a time didn't mean myth. It meant last winter. There was even a word for abandoning children, Aussetzung. It existed because it happened often enough to name. The forest in this story is not symbolic. It was where families sent children when they could no longer afford to keep them alive. And they told themselves the cold would take them quickly, that the forest was mercy. In the earliest versions, there is no wicked stepmother. The woman who suggests abandoning the children is their real mother. That detail was changed later, because even the Grimms struggled to accept the truth the story recorded. Sometimes mothers chose survival over motherhood. Not because they lacked love, because hunger dismantles instinct. The father loves his children, but love does not fill an empty stomach. He argues once. He hesitates. And then he agrees. This matters, because his guilt does not stop him. His tears do not save them. He walks his children into the forest and leaves them there. Twice. The father is not innocent. He is complicit. His weakness is not tragic. It is a choice. The choice to stay alive while his children face the forest alone. Hansel overhears the plan. He does not cry. He does not beg. He prepares. That night, he sneaks outside and fills his pockets with white pebbles. The next day, deep in the forest, he drops them one by one. Moonlight catches the stones. The children follow them home. Their parents open the door and say nothing. Relief and shame exist together in that silence. But here is what the story makes clear. The parents do not apologize. They do not change their minds. They simply wait. Because survival once does not end starvation. The decision has already been made. When the food runs out again, the parents do not hesitate. They do not debate. They lock the door. This time, they make sure Hansel cannot gather stones. This is not desperation. This is intention. The forest is not a mistake. It is a solution they have chosen. Twice. Hansel has only bread now, so he tears pieces from his own ration, his own tiny thread of survival, and drops them behind him as they walk. Bread is food, and in a world where everything is starving, nothing edible survives long. Birds consume the trail. The forest erases the path. This time, the parents walk back alone, and they do not look behind them, because they know the children will not return. They are counting on it. The forest is not enchanted. It is real, dense, cold, unmanaged. A place where wolves still hunted and winter could kill you overnight. The parents believed this would be faster. That exposure, hypothermia, predators, anything would be quicker than the slow wasting of starvation at home. They believed they were choosing mercy. Hansel and Gretel wander for days. They grow weaker, quieter. They stop asking when they will go home. Hunger does that. It traps you in the present, in dizziness, in pain. And just as their bodies begin to fail, they see it. A house made of bread, a roof of gingerbread, windows of sugar, walls you can eat. To us, it sounds whimsical. To a starving child, it is impossible and irresistible. But here is what matters. This house appears in famine folklore across Europe. Not once, not as a unique monster, as a pattern. The fattening house, the child eater's cottage, the place where hunger is weaponized. In German, French, and Slavic tales, these houses appear again and again. Always made of food, always inhabited by someone living alone, always far from civilization. And always, children disappear inside. This is not one witch. This is what people believed existed in times of famine. Places where the starving were lured, fed, fattened, and consumed. They do not knock. They eat. Because when you are starving, you do not ask why help looks too perfect. The woman who lives there is not called a witch in early tellings. She is simply an old woman, living alone, deep in the forest, in a house built from food during a famine. This detail is deliberate. She smiles, she feeds them, she locks the door. Hansel is caged, fed constantly, measured. Gretel is kept useful, cooking, cleaning, preparing meals she is not allowed to eat. Each day, the woman checks Hansel's finger, waiting for flesh. Hansel understands what this means. He delays. He offers bone instead of skin. Not cleverness. Time. In famine stories, survival is often about postponement, living long enough for the moment to shift. Gretel does not wait for rescue. She watches, learns the pattern. When the woman asks her to check the oven, Gretel pretends not to understand. And when the moment comes, she pushes. The fire consumes the one who meant to consume them. This is not triumph. It is necessity. When the children return home, the mother is gone, dead. The story does not explain how. What matters is this. Hansel and Gretel return carrying jewels taken from the house that almost killed them. They are no longer innocent. They have killed. They have stolen. They have learned what hunger teaches quickly. That survival changes you. The father embraces them. He weeps. But the story does not grant him redemption, because he abandoned them twice. And his guilt His terrible, passive guilt kept him alive while his children fought to stay human. Hansel and Gretel is not about a witch. It is about what happens when the systems meant to protect children collapse. Family, food, safety. It records the moment a child realizes no one is coming to save them, and what they must become to stay alive. It speaks a truth most fairy tales avoid. Sometimes, parents choose their own survival over their children's, not in a moment of panic, but deliberately, repeatedly, with full knowledge of what the forest means. The Brothers Grimm collected this story because it was being told everywhere, because it was true. Because in villages across Europe, there were children who never came back from the forest, and families who never spoke of them again. We softened this story, turned the mother into a stepmother, turned famine into fantasy, turned cannibalism into costume, turned the father's complicity into victimhood. But the original story refuses to disappear, because it remembers something we still struggle to face. When the world runs out of food, it runs out of mercy. And sometimes, the people who were supposed to protect you are the ones who walk you into the dark. Hansel and Gretel made it home. The story does not tell us how many others did not, or how many fathers stood at the edge of the forest, watching, waiting, hoping their children would not find their way back.